Souls Unitarian Universalist Church, building community, inspiring growth, creating change. Here in the heart of Kansas City, we come together to create this hour of shared reflection so that we might be renewed in courage for these times and inspired to lives of greater dignity, higher purpose, deeper generosity, and more effective action. If you are new to Unitarian Universalism or to our congregation, we want to get to know you and share a part of your journey. If this place is already your spiritual home, welcome once more. We need one another, and it is good to be together again. Through the gifts of technology, we also gather virtually to celebrate community and connections as we lean into the values of justice, compassion, and reason. Welcome to all those who are joining us in this way today. Together, we learn the love that has the power to overcome both loneliness in the heart and oppression in the world. Welcome to our service this morning. May the words and music and images that we offer today nourish our best selves, calling forth abundant wisdom and love.
Arise, O souls, arise.
Good morning, everybody. Well, it's a beautiful day, and I'm sure we're all rested after getting that extra hours of sleep. And everybody's going to vote on Tuesday. Okay. I'm Jean Patterson. I'm a member of the congregation. And echoing the message of the video, we welcome those here in person and those who have chosen to set aside this time to be with us. Our welcome extends to those who have long been a part of All Souls and those here for the first time. In this spirit of inclusion, after the service, please seek out the new faces among us and introduce yourselves and introduce them to others. It may be the beginning of a long and warm friendship. And also, while you're doing that, take note of the members' art in the gallery. We have some very talented people here at All Souls. Today, we welcome back to our pulpit the Reverend Dr. Peter Luckey. During his 24-year tenure as the lead pastor of Plymouth Church in Lawrence, Kansas, the church was well known for taking stands for social justice, and we welcome him back. He's been here with us before. Thank you, Reverend Luckey.
It is so good to be back here. Every time I come to be with you at All Souls in Kansas City, the weather is gorgeous. So I don't know what that's saying, but it's just great to be with you. We like to say in the United Church of Christ, and it belongs to you as well, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. Friends, we gather today in a spirit of peace and in a spirit of love. And it's in that spirit that we remember and lift up Veterans Day, which is coming this Friday, the 11th, that began as Armistice Day, as that day of peace after the awfulness of World War I. And so in the spirit of Armistice Day and in the spirit of peace, which I'm going to be talking about in my sermon, I share these words that your pastor, Reverend Kendall, gave me just a few moments ago. There was an island in time secure and candid when we seemed to walk in freedom as in the sun, with a promise kept, with the dangers of battle ended, and the fearful perils of peace not yet begun. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Rose, and I light this chalice for justice, equity, and compassion in human relations.
Thank you, Rose. Now, please stand and join me as we affirm our covenant. Goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Today I'll be reading Everyone Gets a Say by Jill Twiss and E.G. Keller. Everyone gets a say. All right. Pudding was a quiet snail and did not like shouting. So when he woke up to the sounds of bellows and honks, he poked his head outside of his house, which was inside his other house. Lately, it seemed like Pudding's friends couldn't agree on anything. Today, they were trying to decide what to plant in a sunny patch of land, and it was not going well. Whatever toast the butterfly wanted, Jitterbug the chipmunk did not. Did you know that butterflies drink nectar from flowers using their tongues like straws? Asked Toast. We should plant flowers. But, said Jitterbug. Acorns grow into trees, and trees will give us more acorns. And whatever Duffles and Nudge the otters wanted, Geezer the goose was absolutely against. No plants, shouted Duffles. Just mud, continued Nudge, so we can slide big tummy slides into the lake, they finished together. Honk, 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 bellowed Geezer. I insist on vegetables, and I do not care what anyone else has to say. The yells got louder, and the shouts got shoutier. Pudding had just begun to squish back into his shell when, did you know that queens have bees? Everyone got quiet. What? Asked Jitterbug. A queen bee is someone who leads the bees, said Toast. Whoa, said Jitterbug. Do we need a someone to bring us together? Yes, said Nudge, a someone to be our voice when we all have different voices, finished Duffles. Even Geezer gave a honk of approval. The friends had finally found something they all agreed on. Until. But, said Jitterbug, how do we choose that someone? Maybe the someone who is in charge, interrupted Nudge, should be the someone who's the tallest, finished Duffles. What if we started Pudding, but no one listened? Wait, exclaimed Jitterbug. Maybe the someone who is in charge should be the someone who's the fastest. Huff, puff, said Pudding. If you would just listen. Honk, 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 interrupted Geezer. The someone who is in charge should be the someone who's the loudest. Honk. No, the twinsiest, the floatiest, oldest, fluffiest. No matter how hard he tried, Pudding couldn't get anyone to listen to him. And on they went, the flittiest, the busiest, the squishiest, the slipperiest, the grouchiest. Wait, spluttered Jitterbug. Where is Pudding? The friends looked everywhere they could think of, and no Pudding. Then they heard a tiny squish. Look, shouted Jitterbug. What does that mean? Everyone gets a say. That means that you say who you want to be in charge, said Pudding. And then I say who I want to be in charge. And Duffles and Nudge and Geezer and Toast say who they want to be in charge. Well, said Jitterbug, that is lots of saying. And if after everyone gets their say, we count. And whichever someone most of us want to be in charge, added Pudding, is in charge. Honk, honk, honk. What about the loudest someone? Squawked Geezer, even louder than usual. But Pudding wasn't finished. When everyone gets a say, the very quietest someone gets the same say as the very loudest someone. The very tiniest someone gets the same say as the very biggest someone. Pudding stretched up a little taller as he realized that everyone was listening to him now. It's called voting, said Pudding. Voting is how you have a say, even when no one will listen to you. We think it's, said Duffles. A great idea, finished Nudge. Honk, 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 shouted Geezer. Let's all have our say. And they did. We believe having our say, began Nudge, is of uttermost importance, finished Duffles. Honk, honk, vote, said Geezer. Hello, I have a very important announcement to make, said Jitterbug. The friends of the forest had their say, and the someone who shall be in charge is Pudding the Snail. Pudding was very surprised. He squished forward and spoke quietly. This time everyone was listening. Fellow someones, I promise to listen to you, every single one of your voices, because it doesn't matter if you're the tallest or the shortest or the squishiest or the fluffiest or even the quietest. In our forest, every someone has a say. With that, I'd like to invite the children downstairs with me as the congregation sings us out.
I'm Morris Metter, and I'm a board member at All Souls, and I'm here to do the big ask. The ask, of course, is for money. Since this church relies on donations and regular pledges and needs these monies to these monies to operate. We try to use our money wisely and raise funds in other ways, such as through rentals of the Simpson House and several fundraising events throughout the year, including the annual offering. It is always hard to reach our budget since there is always more to do than we have funds. Please make a pledge when the time comes and fulfill it. In a moment, the offering plate will be passed and all contributions are welcome. Giving for me is not just an obligation or duty. I give because I love this church. In the words of this morning's sermon, it is because of the inclusive love exhibited at All Souls. It is because our church's involvement in social action, because of the real community that is here, and because of being able to learn and explore our own spirituality. Giving is something I want to do, like the money my husband Keith and I spend in fixing up our condo. It is an investment in the fulfillment of a richer life for me and the community I value. The outreach and social justice work that All Souls does is one of the reasons, a very personal reason, for me being here. I remember the first time I was in the All Souls building, and I had no idea what the church was about. At that time, and this was in the mid-1970s, I had just come out as being gay, was living in the Westport area, and belonged to the local Metropolitan Community Church named Spirit of Hope, MCC. MCC churches offered spiritual refuge at that time to LGBT people when most other churches shunned us. All Souls offered to let the church, which at that time had no building, to meet on Sunday afternoons in Conover. This is a good example of inclusive love. We will now receive your generous offerings. Please join me in the dedication of the offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change towards a just and compassionate society.
Hi. Reverend Luckey would like to highlight 2 quotes this morning. First, from one of the most prominent leaders in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. "Returning hate for hate," said King, "multiplies hate, adding deeper darkness to an already devoid of stars. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." And from the first president of South Africa and apartheid activist, Nelson Mandela. Mandela said, "Forgiveness liberates the soul. It removes fear. That's why it's such a powerful weapon."
This is from the New Revised Standard Version of the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 38 through 44. "You have heard it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist an evildoer. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, give your coat as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go also the 2nd mile. Give to the one who asks of you, and do not refuse anyone who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you."
Oh
I dream a world. Thank you, choir. I'd like to begin our time together with just a moment of breathing, and to just take a moment for all of us just to kind of breathe out all the anxiety of the world and bring in the freshness of God's grace. And that is, when you inhale, you might think the word peace, and when you exhale, imagine the word gratitude. Inhale peace, exhale gratitude. Amen. So when I think to myself the question, what's happening to our country? There's a song that comes to my mind. It's from the 1960s. And no, I'm not going to ask you to stand up and raise your hand if you remember this song, that I'm going to out you by your age. But it's by Buffalo Springfield, and it begins with these words. There's something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear. There's a man with a gun over there telling me I got to beware. I think it's time we stop, children. What's that sound? Everybody look, what's going down? It wasn't a man with a gun, it was a man with a hammer. On October 28th at 2 o'clock in the morning, a man named David DePape broke the glass door of the Pelosi's home in San Francisco looking for the Speaker of the House. And you all know by now the details of this, that Nancy Pelosi wasn't there, but her husband Paul was asleep upstairs. And in the middle of the night, he was awoken from his sleep. He was attacked by this man with a hammer. He lost consciousness. He had a skull fracture. He was taken to the hospital. It's as if the unthinkable has become the inevitable. It was only October 21st here, right in our doorstep of Kansas City, Kansas, when an organization called the Dialogue Institute, the Raindrop Foundation. Some of you may be familiar with that organization. When I was serving at Plymouth Church in Lawrence, we shared potlucks together to mark the end of Ramadan. This is a Muslim, Turkish-based organization whose sole mission is to bring people together of different faiths for dialogue and understanding and cooperation. And on that day, on the 21st of October, that Dialogue Institute right here in Kansas City was attacked by vandals. Swastikas were sprayed and obscene graffiti posted at the Dialogue Institute. What's happening to our country? We're living in a time when the rise of hate-filled speech is taking place, when the number of death threats against members of Congress is on a rise, a huge rise. It's said that the man who attacked Paul Pelosi with that hammer was filled in his mind and his computer with hate-filled speech and conspiracy theories. And our social scientists have shown that there's a correlation between the proliferation of hate speech and physical acts of violence. What is happening to our country? And what is alarming still is that a lot of this hate-filled speech and conspiracy theories is finding a home in something called Christian nationalism, which has nothing to do with Christianity. This is a movement afoot that is twisting the symbols of faith, manipulating the symbols in the name of Jesus to serve the end of domination, the domination of one group, a white supremacist group, over all of our country, over our laws, over our institutions, men over women. domination through force and violence if need be, any means necessary to grab power. These are folks that want to jam a crowbar through the spoke of our democracy. Think, my friends, of January 6, 2021. And replace our system of democracy with a theocracy. Our democracy, the one that our mothers and fathers and ancestors have given their full lives for. Hello, thinking of Veterans Day. Democracy, the form of government that Winston Churchill said is the worst form of government, except for all the others. Christian nationalism is not Christian at all. Where Jesus taught peace and love and truth, Christian nationalism preaches hatred, violence, and disinformation. How many of us find ourselves remembering the time in Germany in the 1930s when the Nazis rose to power? A time in the life of Germany when the Nazis took over the church and filled the church with their hate-filled anti-Semitism and hatred of Jews. It was at that time that brave souls like Dietrich Bonhoeffer and the Barmen Declaration stood fast against what the Nazis were doing to the church and created their own confessing movement apart from Nazi power. And many paid dearly for their lives. And I wonder at times, my friends, if us here at All Souls and other faith communities, if it's not a Dietrich Bonhoeffer moment when we need to stand firm and resolute against movements like Christian nationalism. Because remember, friends, this movement, this Christian nationalism movement, would obliterate, would run roughshod over the First Amendment of our country. And what is the First Amendment? But it stipulates that Congress shall not establish one religion over another, but create the free exercise of religion for all. This may be such a moment. So, where are we today? 48 hours before this incredibly consequential election. I would suggest it is a time to ask the question of Buffalo Springfield. What is happening here? To ask the question about who is being hurt, whose rights are being threatened, whose dignity is being attacked. And what does this moment mean? This moment, this election, what does it mean for Muslims, for Hindus, for Jews, for African Americans, for Native Americans, for Asian Americans, for the LGBTQ community, for blacks, for those that have been wrongly incarcerated? What does it mean for our children? What does it mean for our grandchildren? And I suggest, my friends, that this is a time that we need to be wise as serpents, as well as innocent as doves. This is a time when we are called to pay attention, to not be misled by lies and the smoke and the noise. And above all, it's a time to vote. But I want to suggest something, not just but, and this is an and. In addition to paying attention, this is, I believe, also a time when we have to ask the deeper question, not only what is it that we are being called to do, but who are we being called to be? It's not just a matter of probing our actions, but it's also a matter of probing our hearts. Who are we? Intellectually, but also spiritually and emotionally and physically and mentally. And what does it mean to live through this election? I mean, after we have fulfilled our constitutional duty. When partisan rancor has reached a fever pitch, how will we transcend the noise? What is it that our faith teaches us I want to make a confession to you, my friends. I may look cool, calm, and collected up here speaking to you, but I am not cool, calm, and collected. Inside, I am a jangle of nerves and emotion, and I feel like I'm a pressure cooker ready to blow a gasket. I want to fight back. I want to give tit for tat. I want to extract punishment. Yes, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But you know what they say, if we do that route, pretty soon the whole world will be blind and toothless. Scratch any one of us below the surface and our reptilian instincts are ready to kick in. Our racing heart, our raised voice, our clenched fist, our outrage. And the media is all too happy to comply, aren't they? To stoke our fire. It makes money. Anger has its place. It's human to feel anger in the face of injustice and unfairness of what we're going through right now in our country. It is completely understandable to feel angry. But I want to suggest there's a deeper place that we are being called to go this morning. It's this place that's calling out to us from the depths of our faith. And whether you call yourself a Christian or a Jew or a Buddhist, a Unitarian, whether you look to God or Jesus or Buddha, whether you look to the core principles of the Unitarian Universalist Church, wherever you look at the core of our faith is a call to what? To put down our sword and to meet hate not with more hate, but with love. Forbearance, gentleness, strength. Not weakness, playing the victim, but from strength that we pray the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, make me, Lord, an instrument of thy peace, and when there is hatred, let me sow love. Friends, as a Christian pastor, it is the same Jesus of Nazareth, whose name is now being twisted by the Christian nationalists, the same Jesus of Nazareth who in his teaching spoke to the crowd gathered around the woman accused of adultery, ready to stone her to death. And Jesus said what to the crowd? He said, he or she who is without sin may cast the first stone. It is this Jesus of Nazareth, on the night when he was arrested by the temple authorities, ready to be crucified. And Peter took out a sword, and Jesus said to Peter, put away that sword. And it's this Jesus from a mountaintop, the very words of Jesus of Nazareth, who said, you have heard it said, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the evildoer. If anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other also. What if we tapped into that spirit? What if? I'm thirsty today for justice. What if we tapped into that spirit? Some of you, do you love baseball? Some baseball fans here? Raise your hands, follow baseball. And some of you probably know better than I do the story about Jackie Robinson, who was the first African American to break into Major League Baseball. He played for the Brooklyn Dodgers, and the manager of the Dodgers at the time was a guy named Branch Rickey. This is years and years ago. And he struck a deal with Jackie Robinson, and he pressed his intensely competitive athlete to agree that for 3 years, whatever abuse came his way, he would take it without a word. And Jackie Robinson didn't like that very much and said, Mr. Rickey, are you looking for a Negro that's afraid to fight back? And this is back in the 40s. And Branch Rickey looked at Jackie Robinson and replied, I'm looking for a ball player that has the guts not to fight back. Turning the other cheek is not an act of weakness, my friends. It's an act of defiance and an act of strength. It's the same spirit that was in Nelson Mandela after 27 years of being incarcerated under the apartheid regime of South Africa, on February 11th, 1990, walked out of prison a free man. Did he take revenge upon the apartheid government? No. He helped set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and called for forgiveness. Nelson Mandela. It's the same spirit that was in Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, when he was met with the attack of dogs and water hoses and vowed not to fight back. And Reverend Kendall and I were just talking a few moments ago how one of your Unitarian pastors by the name of Reverend James Reed came down from Massachusetts to join that nonviolent protest at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. And he was attacked and killed. It takes guts and courage to walk this walk. And it's your tradition, my friends. It's my tradition. It's our tradition. The nonviolent resistance doesn't mean becoming a sucker and playing their game, but playing our own game, because this is who we are. This is who we are. We're people of love. And we're the Christian nationalists lord power over others. Instead, we vow to stand side by side with the least of these, as Jesus of Nazareth lived, not power over, but power with. So friends, let us march and protest and speak out as Dr. King did, matching hate, not hate for hate, but hate with love. Presiding Episcopal Bishop Michael Curry says in The Rise of Christian Nationalism, there's three things that we can do. Three things. And he's speaking to the Episcopal Church, but I think he's speaking to all of us. Number one, return to the teachings and the spirit of Jesus of Nazareth. Number one. Number two, work on behalf of our common humanity. We are all God's children. And number three, and perhaps the most difficult of all, build relationships. Build relationships, especially with people with whom we may disagree. That's not easy to do, my friends. But these are practical ways that we can live out a spirit of nonviolence, of love. Not power over, but power with. Not hate for hate, but hate with love. I'll share with you a story that I think really fits for this moment. Some of you and many of you remember September 11th, 2001. And we were confronted at that moment as people of faith. How do we respond to that moment? On that Sunday, after that horrible Tuesday of September 11, 2001, that Sunday in our pulpit, I was not the preacher. It was Reverend Lou Henshaw, my colleague, who preached that day. I'll never forget, the pews were packed. We had over 500 people at Plymouth on that morning. People were hurting, they were mad, they were upset. They wanted to hear a word from their pastor. And what many people wanted to hear in the sermon that day is not what they did hear. And it may even have been that the pastor that day, the preacher, didn't even want to preach this sermon. But the sermon that he did preach that day was a sermon about forgiveness and nonviolence. Reverend Lou Henshaw on that day to that Pank sanctuary invited us to put down the sword. And then he closed his sermon that day in 2001, September 16th, reading a letter from two parents, Phyllis and Orlando Rodriguez, who'd lost their son in the World Trade Center, worked for Cantor Fitzgerald at the top of the World Trade Center, and lost their son as part of their attack. And they wrote a letter, and the letter's title is Not in Our Son's Name. Not in Our Son's Name. And the letter read like this. They wrote, our son Greg is among the many missing from the World Trade Center attack. Since we first heard the news, we have shared moments of grief, comfort, hope, despair, fond memories with his wife, the two families, our friends and neighbors, his loving colleagues at Cantor Fitzgerald. We see our hurt and anger reflected among everybody we meet. We cannot pay attention to the daily flow of news about this disaster, but we read enough of the news to sense that our government is headed in the direction of violent revenge. And this is what the Rodriguezes wrote. It's not the way to go. It will not avenge our son's death, not in our son's name. Our son died a victim of inhuman ideology. Our actions should not serve the same purpose. Let us grieve, let us reflect and pray. Let us think about a rational response that brings real peace and justice to our world. But let us not, as a nation, add to the inhumanity of our times. Friends, I believe that we are in another September 11th moment. And the attack of terrorism, what Paul Pelosi experienced in San Francisco, what the Dialogue Institute experienced right here in Kansas City, is an act of terrorism. It's not from without, but it's right from within. It's within our own country. But in the same way, we are being called as people to figure out what is our response in this moment, 48 hours before the election. In this moment of the rise of Christian nationalism, and violence and coercion. Number one, we pay attention. Number two, we vote. And then maybe most importantly, we search our hearts and go to the depths of our faith and recognize that, friends, we are called to bring peace to this world and not war. And that if we are going to have peace in the world, it has to begin inside of each one of us. Let there be peace. Let it begin with me. Let us, in our own way, adopt those words of St. Francis of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. May it be so, and may it be soon. Amen.
Please rise if you are able to sing with me and the choir, I Woke Up This Morning.
Free.
friends, I hope you realize how important you are. Not just you individually, but all of you together, how much we need each other, how much we need All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church now at this moment in our history. We need each other to support each other, encourage each other, to keep us on the path, to help remind us of what's best inside of us. Celebrate the life of this community and who you are. You are leaven for the world. You are a light in this moment of darkness. Be the light that you already are, my dear friends. So go forward from this place in the words of the Jesus of Nazareth, who said, "My peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, but as I give. Let not your hearts be troubled, and neither let them be afraid."